I'm pro cheating. Not that you guys labeled me pro cheating.
Pro cheating.
Hello, welcome to Hat Trick. I'm Jordan Dowler-Coltman, joined by Elliott Tanti and Braden Dowler-Coltman. Welcome back, boys. Big busy week in the world of sports. We're going to talk about baseball. We're going to talk about basketball, and we're going to talk about hockey. Before we get to any of that, as we get revved up and ready for Halloween, both of you, what are you going next week for Halloween? What are you going to dress up and go trick-or-treating as, Braden? Because we know you still go around trick-or-treating. I know you do.
I take my dog trick-or-treating. So there's a community in Ritchie here in Edmonton that somebody lays, like they go ahead of time to a whole bunch of houses and give out dog treats so that they're prepared for when all of this gaggle of dogs come by. So this year, I am dressing my dog Ellie up as Missy Elliott.
Oh, that's very clever. Very clever. Of course, it
I'm
only
very
works if
excited.
people know the dog's name, but that's great.
Well, that's why I started with that.
That's true. All right, Elliott, how about you? Are you dressing your dog up?
Also dressing my dog up. She's got a costume. She's got 2 costumes this year. We've got an old woman costume for her, which is very cute, with glasses and a wig. That one's very good. And then she's got a Wonder Woman costume. That's also great. I myself am going as Andre the Giant. It's been very successful. I look a lot like him with my long hair, and I've now cut mutton chops into my face. So it's all out. Very revealing, not safe for work costume. I gotta say.
Is that because of the stilts?
No, it's because you can literally just see everything down there. It's a good thing we're on we're on a Zoom call when I'm wearing it this last time, because there's no secrets once you see me in this.
Thank goodness this is an audio format and not a video podcast.
Well, what happened was
although the ratings might be higher, Elliott, you never know.
I swear I picked large, but I got a medium, and I'm just going.
All right, let's get to it. Here's topic 1. Okay. I have not prepared either of these two boys for this topic ahead of time, just because I thought it'd be a little bit more fun to dig into it with both of them coming in cold, but I know they're going to have lots to say on it. As the NHL season has gotten underway, we've had some great ups and some great downs from a lot of different teams. If you're an Oilers fan, as the 3 of us are, obviously it's been a fun start to the year. Great out of the gate. All of the players we've hoped would come out of camp looking their best have been. Puljujärvi's been great and all of that. But we're not going to talk about the Oilers today. Because we talk about the Oilers all the time. We're going to talk about a different team. Now, I am not one to spike the football. I am not one to over celebrate or to boast unfairly, but I am occasionally one who likes to think that the sports karma gods occasionally shine down when we are good and when we behave ourselves. And I think we behaved ourselves pretty well for the last couple of years, boys, as we have put up with the absolute downpour of Eastern media claiming and complaining and crying and whining about the fact that Connor McDavid might want to leave if the Oilers aren't better. The question to both of you today, is it time to start asking, is Austin Matthews going to want to leave the Leafs if they don't right the ship? Elliott, we will go to you first. Are the Leafs in real trouble, or is it just too early to say that?
Well, I think you're coming to the guy first who's predicted they weren't going to make the playoffs this year. Teed it up pretty well with that. I mean, they're 2-3-1 to start the year, 5 points, -7 goal differential.
On a whopping defeat a couple nights ago.
Yeah. I think there's look, it's still too early to tell. I mean, I do think they are in a really tough division, and but you look at some of the teams ahead of them, like, are they better than the Detroit Red Wings? Absolutely. Are they better than the Buffalo Sabres, which is another story in and of itself? Absolutely. I think where they're sitting right now, I understand why Toronto's on fire and everyone's panicking. But it's just 6 games in. That being said, I think Zach Hyman has double the number of goals of Marner or Matthews and the other one that's good there combined, which to me is just hilarious. But yeah, I totally understand why people in Toronto are losing their mind. Like, this is not, when you look over at the Edmonton Oilers, they're 5-0, and that's supposed to be your rival in the country. Uh-oh.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, whether or not he's going to want to leave, I think still I'm with Elliot. It's too early. He does seem like he'd be in the camp of wanting to win at all costs. And if that means that the Leafs are going in the opposite direction, then I do think he'll want a scene change or a place that can support that. The thing that's interesting right now for me is looking at what happened here with Toronto. Again, yes, it's early, but you look at their lineup now, they're missing a really integral part. And you look at, like we were just talking about the Oilers, we have added a very integral part, and that's Zach Hyman. Toronto's missing this key player who could play first line, second line, third line. He can play power play. He can play penalty kill. He's a very versatile player that made that team very successful, I think, the last few years. And now we're getting to reap the rewards here in Edmonton of that. And not saying directly that is the reason that they're falling off, but I do think that it goes a long way.
And obviously you're right, Ellie. It's very early, but when you're a team with the kind of attention on them that Edmonton or Toronto is, the media will always be quick to jump on the smallest whiff of failure or blood in the water, if you will. And I think that we do have to start to ask ourselves the question, are we beginning down a road with this team where they might find themselves very quickly in a position where the pressure is just so great that they have to do something maybe drastic to try to make a change and at least show that we're aware that something's not working. Look, the first and obvious targets are always going to be, coach and general manager, but really Sheldon Keefe's only been there for a couple of years because he's the second guy under Kyle Dubas anyway. And I think the big hot seat has to fall to Kyle Dubas because this is the Kyle Dubas experiment. And in so many ways, I think Kyle Dubas, came in with such a shiny resume as like a progressive new style general manager who's going to use analytics. And, he was the next generation under the tutelage and under the guidance of Brendan Shanahan, obviously, who's sort of the veteran steady hand there. And yet, really, when you think about it, Kyle Dubas took over a team that already had Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, already had at the time Morgan Riley, and at that time Nazem Kadri as their sort of young core. Obviously Kadri's gone. The only real major change Dubas made was signing an $11 million contract with John Tavares. And at this point you have to look at that and say, did that do anything other than kind of tie up a lot of money in one player? That has he made a big enough or significant enough contribution? The big piece that's missing on Dubas's resume is finding solid goaltending. They just don't have it. Obviously Freddie Anderson looked like he was going to be the guy. He got a little bit banged up and then he just never came back the same. And they haven't found a true guy to replace him. God knows in Edmonton, we've had the same problem for years, but we've also learned in Edmonton, and as so many other teams have, when you don't have that key goaltending position fixed and made to work, your team, no matter how good they are in front of you, no matter how great Matthews and Marner on their best days are, you can't win enough hockey games to really be competitive. And I think that that's the struggle that we're in. They were really good last year with some of the goaltending that they got, but I think even then, was that a flash in the pan? Was that partly due to the weird season? Like, how much of that can translate forward? So far this season, it hasn't looked like the team we saw last year. And I would think, and maybe correct me if you guys think it's different, but the first target from the change place has to be Dubas. And if it isn't, then he's going to have to make a trade and know that it's one of the last chances he's going to get here to make a change. It's probably Marner, I would assume, would be the guy going out, but then you got to find a dance partner who's going to do that. Like, Kyle Dubas is in a really precarious position, I would think, going into this. And if they can't get it turned around by American Thanksgiving, which is only in a couple weeks now, boys, they could really be looking at a position where the pressure is just going to be ratcheted up so much they're going to have to do something drastic. What do you think, Elliot? Last thoughts?
I think it's a little too early to put Dubas under the bus. I think a lot of NHL teams and Brendan Shanahan would know that the time to make a GM change is not in the midseason, but that's something you do in between seasons. And if for any other reason that the heat gets turned up and then they start, as we saw happen here in Edmonton, making deals to try and save their job is not where you want to be.
Yeah, but so then why wouldn't you pull the trigger before he gets the opportunity to start?
Well, there's no reason why you can't quietly say that from now on, Brendan Shanahan's going to approve all trades and that's good. And he probably likely is in a space like that anyway, just because of the way that the Maple Leafs team is sort of built. I think you guys make a lot of points. I do think, there's goaltending, but they didn't change a lot from last year, and they didn't have a lot of success last year. And in fact, they lost, one of their, one of those glue players in Hyman. I think you guys' points are
well. I don't
right.
know if they didn't have enough success, Elliot. They were the best team coming out of the Canadian division, and they did roll over a lot of the teams in this division throughout the season.
Yeah,
it was when they hit the playoffs, they just weren't ready to go. And they lost some veterans. That's really what they lost, right? Joe Thornton and
going back to your original question though, Matthew's going to get pushed out, or is he going to be wanting to leave? Though I don't feel like the media, as crazy and high pressure as the media in Toronto is, I don't feel like they would necessarily go at Matthews first. I feel like you guys are saying with Dubas and with one of their first questions to Sheldon Keefe a couple of days ago was like, what's wrong with Nick Ritchie, and is he ever going to be able to help the team? And it's like, well, why is the focus on this guy who's not supposed to be leading this team? Why is the focus on all of this other depth instead of saying, Matthews, Marner, get your shit together? Because I just feel like they're skirting around the actual, it's on these big players to come up and be big, and we're not seeing that right now.
Yeah. Well, time will tell, obviously. I think the question about whether or not the media ever really, drops the hypocrisy part of asking these kind of questions about the Stars at Edmonton instead of the Stars in their, money-making cow in the Toronto Maple Leafs. Time will tell, but it would certainly be fun to start to see a little bit of the same kind of hyperbole thrown at the Leafs as opposed to just out west to the Oilers. Anyway, we will leave it there for now. That's topic one.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network is excited to announce that we have launched a merch store on our website. The store is full of ordinary swag, including t-shirts, hoodies, and hats. You can pick out something awesome and support your favorite podcast today by heading over to ordinarypodcasts.com.
Back to our new favorite sport on this podcast. We've talked a lot of baseball in the last couple of weeks. Elliot knows how much I enjoy it. We're going to talk about the World Series matchup, but not really the baseball itself, because frankly, I couldn't be bothered. What we're going to talk more about is how on earth the Houston Astros are back in the World Series only 2 years after being caught cheating, and whether or not this is just another indication of how unbelievably soft Major League Baseball treated this. And not only that, but the Red Sox, who were caught with breaking the rules a couple years ago, they found themselves in a pennant series looking to make it to the World Series too. Like, is Major League Baseball does this just not look good for Major League Baseball, Braden, as they look back at what happened a couple years ago? Like, this can't be what they were hoping would happen.
Well, okay. So first I want to go back to the sticky substance stuff. Okay. So this is a thing that came up mid-season. People went, oh, we shouldn't be allowed to do that. Okay, great. So you move on from that. 2 years ago, we found out that this team that was in the World Series was banging on Gatorade cooler buckets.
I thought it was garbage cans.
It was garbage cans. It was all sorts of things. They're banging on everything.
Homemade drums.
That's right. So they got inventive. They got creative. And then the Major League Baseball went, oh, well, you can't do that. You can't do that in the.
And just to clarify, they weren't just doing it for entertainment. They were banging on these drums to signal pitches. Yeah. So that the batter knew what pitches were coming because they were calling signs. Yes. Or they were stealing signs.
Yeah.
But they were also accused of using like electronic devices and all kinds of stuff that never ended up being like sort of clarified by the league. Right.
Yeah. So this is the problem. There's the clarification seems to be wrong. When other leagues change their rules, they sit down with the players and the Players Association to describe what you can and cannot do moving forward. The Astros, this happened to the Astros 2 years ago. They won the World Series, and then it came out, they found out they cheated. Everybody was all up in arms. But the Astros, you would think they would be suspended for the year or 2 years,
or the players accused would be,
or their trophy would be stripped from the team, or their rings would be whatever. The Astros were fined $5 million Okay.
Yeah, there's not a player on their team that makes that much money. It's nothing.
Yeah. However, this is the maximum allowed by the MLB Constitution, and and they were forced to forfeit a first and a second round draft pick in 2020-21. Now, again, in other leagues, draft picks are really valuable. They become, like in the NBA, they're huge. In hockey, draft picks are really, really important. Baseball, not so much, because they get moved all the time. They don't have to sign right away. You can re-enter the draft at any point. So, and then, the manager, the general manager, are suspended for a year. So the general manager, Lanau, he is out of work. AJ Hinch, however, is the new manager of the Detroit Tigers, and the assistant general manager, who was with Boston at the time when the suspensions came down. He was suspended for a year. He was now in the playoffs this year, facing off against the Astros. So you've got these two teams, both full of personnel that have been involved in this cheating scandal, all the way at the top again. I do think that this is a problem.
I mean, is it? I guess. I mean, as long as there's baseball, there's going to be cheating. This is something about baseball that people are always pushing the rules. I think,
and people get mad at me for my takes on baseball.
Is it really that big of a deal? I don't know. Like, what's the other example of like a cheating scandal? You got Belichick and the New England Patriots.
The Deflategate, yeah.
There's Deflategate. There's also the filming the signals or whatever too. Spygate. They did some.
They're all gate something. What was this? Gate, Braden? What did they call this? Astrogate?
Yeah, I don't even know.
Gatorade Gate.
Gate.
The trash tros.
So what's my take on this? Well, it doesn't seem like what MLB did was very different from what other leagues have done in terms of like in terms of severity of the punishment. I know draft picks don't mean much, but there's something.
Here's the thing, though.
But
here's the thing. Here's the thing, Elliot. Here's the thing. You gave two examples, both in the NFL and both in the regular season. No, I'm sorry. Deflategate was in the playoffs, but it wasn't in the championship game. It wasn't in the World Series. It wasn't in the absolute pinnacle of your sport. And that as a league and as a team, that scandal exposed not only your complete lack of regulation as far as how this team wasn't caught doing this in the moment. Number two, the way in which you punish them just exposed how absolutely flimsy your retribution punishment system is.
They could do it again, and $5 million is all they're going to have to be.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's just no other league. I cannot believe that any other league would let their championship game or series be this desecrated. Yeah, I think what it is Major League Baseball. They fumbled this investigation and then consequences.
Wrong sport.
Okay, fine. They dropped it. They erred. Whatever. Who gives a shit? They did an absolutely terrible job at dealing with their own mess. And now they're reaping what they sowed, because this team still has talent and gets back here. And it just looks like the league ends up with egg on their face. Their big fall showcase has this additional storyline attached to it because they didn't.
I don't disagree with anything.
They didn't clean up what their problems.
How do we know they're not still cheating?
Well, but my point would be like, maybe their cheating actually didn't have that much of an impact, because here they are back at presumably not doing this now.
Well, maybe they're doing it in a different way.
They should just do it. Oh, you're right. Lance Armstrong should still have all 7 world titles, because he was still probably the fastest guy out there.
Lance Armstrong, that's a topic for another day. I mean, everyone else is doping too. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I mean, right? Like
what you just said is, if it doesn't make a difference, should they be allowed to break the rules?
But it's not like, are you going to have the guy that's when he's on second base not look at the signals from the catcher? Like, everyone does that. Everyone does. They change up their signals,
but they're not banging from the.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying the president. I do appreciate that this is the pinnacle of the game, and they did it during this. But ultimately, they're back there now, presumably not cheating again. And it goes to show you that maybe the cheating didn't really have all that much of an impact on the game. They were just a really good team and a really strong team. And therefore, maybe the punishment did fit the crime in that way. And I think leagues just generally just struggle with this, Jordan. Like, the problem with just singling out the MLB is that, there's countless examples in all 4 or 5 of the major professional sports where it's just like, it's been lackluster in terms of what the cost is for cheating. And, it seems to be kind of how it goes.
It should be higher though, because the sanctity of the sport, like when there's, I think there should just be a much better precedence for it.
If this were a normal situation in a normal organization that wasn't just going to make bank no matter what, you'd go into a situation where you do go through a review process, you have a report, that report would make recommendations, and then you'd make those recommendations. Has any of that happened? Did any of that happen in the NFL? Has that ever happened is there any precedent for that in any other spaces? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well,
$5 million. $5 million. They won the World Series, which means they probably made like $3 million times that.
$5 million seems steep to me, but that's just
not in the MLB.
But just because that's where we're at with all these leagues.
All right, we'll leave it there. That's topic 2. Do you or someone you know own a small business? Are you looking to grow or to reach new customers? Hey, why not let us help? Hattrick is looking for unique brands, businesses, and products to advertise on our show. You can find out how we can help spread the word about your business by contacting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Let's jump to a different sport. We're going to go to the hard court now. I know Braden and his buddy Christian have covered what we're going to talk about today pretty extensively for the last couple of weeks on their podcast, because it's pretty much been the only story of the postseason and coming into spring training. What are we still on baseball here? Too much baseball talk on this show. You've got me all tangled up. It's been the talk of preseason in the around the NBA, and obviously as the NBA is now tipped off and started their season, it continues to be a great drama, and Elliot and I wanted to crack at it. So we're going to talk a little bit about Ben Simmons and the 76ers, and just what an absolute and pardon my French clusterfuck this has just evolved into. For those who have not been following along, the Philadelphia 76ers last postseason watched Ben Simmons just absolutely implode as a player, unable to take shots, afraid to take shots, ended up just completely just falling apart from what was such a promising start to his career. His postseason performance last year was so bad. And in Philadelphia, where the fans are absolutely ruthless, there was just no room for the level of just complete, implosion. We've seen a lot of players sort of fall off and just not perform in the playoffs, and they've been great regular season performers, but this was something different for the NBA. They lost, obviously. A lot of the blame was put on his shoulders, and it was pretty clear going into the offseason that he wanted out. He did not want to play for this team anymore. That was the situation. New general manager there, I think a couple years, maybe, or maybe even just last year, Braden, you can correct me, Daryl Morey, who previously been with the Houston Rockets and obviously built that team into a great regular season team, but again, a team that couldn't kind of get over the hump in Houston, found himself in a baby rebuild, let's say, just a retooling in Philadelphia. He'd hired Doc Rivers, and he was ready to take this team to the next level. And obviously with the 2 stars, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, this was expected to be a serious contender. They weren't last year. Postseason, they knew that this was the problem that they were going to have to deal with. And both sides just dug their heels in. Ben Simmons demanding a trade, obviously a member of Clutch, which is LeBron James and Rich Paul's agency, and an agency that of course did very well getting several of their players out of bad situations and into different ones. AD for one, leaving the Pelicans, obviously, but Ben Simmons' camp wanted out, and the 76ers just said, no, we're gonna play this out. We don't have any good trade options for you. We'll see what happens, and we'll see you in the fall. He showed up to training camp clearly uninterested, and was kicked out of practice 2 or 3 days ago, not for even participating. He had a cell phone in his pocket. Doc Rivers basically told him to get out of the gym, come back when he was ready to actually participate, and that hasn't happened yet. So now the team suspended him for a day or 2. It wasn't even like a serious sort of get out of here for a while, but it just feels like on all sides of this, some serious mismanagement, some serious miscalculation We've seen this before, guys like, in different leagues, even Jesse Puljujärvi said he didn't want to play here. We sent him off to Europe. He came back. He was ready to go. Ben Simmons, I just don't know where this goes from here. And I think that's the big question around the sporting world. Before we let Elliott in on this, because I know he's got so many strong takes on this. Braden, you've gone into a lot of this. And I know you and Christian have talked at nauseum about this. At this point, where do you stand on this? Who's at fault? Is this on Ben Simmons or is this on the 76ers?
Well, it's all laughable. It's just like you said, I think you summed it up perfectly. It's a clusterfuck. It's a circus. I don't think the Sixers are necessarily to blame here. Ben Simmons is a paid employee of this organization. He has a job to do.
Just signed a new contract.
He abstained from coming to preseason or training camp. He was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars every day he wasn't there, because he was holding out for a trade, like you said. And I don't think the 76ers were just waiting. They were trying desperately to move him, and they were trying desperately to get the value that a first overall pick garners. However, this first overall pick doesn't, here's one. He takes more shots. He takes less shots than Kyrie Irving. I just don't think that he's going to, I don't think that this is going to end well for him coming back to the Sixers. He like you said, he showed up. He looked incredibly unimpressed. He's told, I think he had a personal meeting with the team, the organization, saying, I'm here. I want to be here right now, but I'm not ready to play. I'm not mentally prepared to play, which is very vague. It doesn't tell us how long that will take. If that's a serious thing, then let's support that guy to be in a mental place that he's ready to play basketball. But if it's about not wanting, if this is an ego thing, then I don't know how this works out. I don't know what the resolve is until he gets traded. And Daryl Morey, the GM, has said this could take 4 years of his contract to figure out. And we're not just going to moving him. We're going to do our due diligence. This is our ask. It just every day, every week, it gets worse and worse. And I think soon enough, the distraction of it all will be, because now you've got fans who are chanting at their other team, the Philadelphia Eagles games, fuck Ben Simmons. You don't want that. It's such a distraction.
Yeah. Elliot, thoughts on this one?
Well, let's go back to your original question here. Who is to blame? Who is to blame in this situation of Ben Simmons? I mean, I think there's blame that goes around to everyone, the player, the team. But I think the majority of the blame, at the end of the day for me, goes to Doc Rivers. Let's think back to where the start of this is. Where does this start? It's a question that Doc Rivers got at the end of their final series in the playoffs about Ben Simmons. And Doc Rivers was not directly critical of Ben Simmons, but certainly didn't give him the show or respect. I think the question in Braden was, is this a championship team with Ben Simmons on it or playing whatever position was sort of the question. And he was vague. I mean, he was taken out of context, but he was vague on it. Your job as the coach of a team is to get your players to the best situation that you're in. Well, that's his job. And at that moment, at the end of that series, after what had happened in the playoffs with Ben Simmons, that was not the time to take a shot or to be vague or say anything that could have been interpreted as anything other than, I have the full support of this player and we are going to work with him throughout the summer or wherever. And we believe, yes, Ben Simmons is the player that we need on this team, whether you feel it or not. That's your job as a coach. And he failed at that moment. And that's what's kickstarted this entire thing through the summer. And that's where we're at right now. If Ben Simmons, or if Doc Rivers' response to that question was unequivocal in his support for Ben Simmons, we're not having this conversation today. And we're not in the situation that we're at. So lots of blame to go around. And since then, there's been lots of mistakes made on a lot of different fronts. But what's patient A in this situation? It's Doc Rivers and that response to that question.
Wow. All right. Well, here's one for you too, Braden. Let me throw this back at you. Are we looking at the wrong people here? Is this not between Doc Rivers or the 76ers or Ben Simmons? Does this actually all go back to James Harden? Is this James Harden's fault? and how he got out of his situation with the Rockets last year by doing a very similar thing where he really just did not want to participate, showed up to camp in out of shape and just did not put in any effort in until he got what he wanted. I mean, we've all heard about we're in the player empowerment era and the players have more power than they've ever had in the NBA. Is this just a symptom of a much bigger situation, or can this not be drawn right back to that? I mean, Daryl Morey literally had to deal with that situation last year.
Yeah, likely very similar situation. And as you said there, the player empowerment movement, that goes back, almost
for the decision
6-7 years. Yeah, the decision even. Yeah, Jimmy Butler moving out of Chicago. I think well, what we're seeing now, I think, is a little bit different in the situation with James Harden, because Daryl Morey is in the driver's seat again and has had that experience happen. So he's now saying, I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to wait this out. And this player who is under contract, who we want to play on our team because he is a valuable asset, more importantly on the defensive end, we need him to come to camp and buy into the team. I think the issue.
But how long does that last? How long is he a valuable asset? The longer he doesn't play, the less valuable he is, both as a trade asset, but also to the team itself. And they can't expect that Ben Simmons is going to sit out for, let's say, 2-3 months and then still come back and play for this team. I mean, at some point you've gone a bridge too far.
Yeah. So, well, that's the catch. That's the catch there is at what point are you going to, what package comes back? Because you're not going to get Damian Lillard for this guy anymore. You're not going to get a premier piece to put in. So either you're looking at future picks or you're looking at, some future assets, and all of those teams aren't places that. So,
and as he misplayed his hand in it too, because now by holding out, as opposed to just showing up and being a good little soldier, explaining you don't want to be with this team, but showing up and showing, look, I'm still a valuable player.
Bizarre.
Your trade aspect is a lot higher. Here, you just look like a disgruntled player that why would anyone want this guy at this point? He hasn't been able to perform in the playoffs. He hasn't shown up in any kind of bet on myself situation here. He literally just looks like player just completely lost all touch with what other people's perception of him is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the attitude coming, you can see his face in that practice that he doesn't want to be there, and the rest of the team can. So if you are one of the leaders, quote unquote, of the team, then this is not how you go about showing that.
Elliott, last thoughts?
I mean, I think you just hit the nail on the head right there. At some point, this has got to end, and I think it ends with a conversation between an agent and an owner, or maybe the NBA steps up at some point and say, look, Ben, you got to play because you got to demonstrate value and play hard, and we'll make the best move possible. But you've got to demonstrate your value because you're at the lowest of the low right now in terms of trade value, and we as an organization won't accept that.
Yeah, and the only struggle with that, Elliott, is again, we're dealing with an agent who's got a reputation for being one of those guys who just does not do things in the conventional way. I mean, Rich Paul is known around the league as being he's a bully, right? And that's what has made him successful. And as he is who he is, though, and that's part of, I think, the contributing factor to this. I think I drew a very, very localized analogy earlier to the whole Puljujärvi thing, where you had a player in Edmonton. Different sport, I get that. Different, very lot of different factors, culturally, language, all the different things that were contributing to Jesse Puljujärvi not wanting to be in the Oilers. But you had an agent go to the team and say, look, my client wants a trade. They said, okay, hold on, let's see what happens. And everyone sort of just took a breath and waited, right?
Yep.
But later, I think it was made very clear that the agent may have been pushing Jesse Puljujärvi in a way that was not helpful to him and where he actually was in his career. And over time, luckily in that situation, things worked out. I feel like in this situation, we're in a very similar place where we have some very big egos, some very big stakes, and some very, some big characters involved in this who are dealing with a lot of three-dimensional chess, as Braden pointed out. Daryl Morey just joined this organization. He cannot be seen to be getting absolutely nothing for what was an incredibly important and valuable asset for this organization.
First overall pick.
Rich Paul is using his leverage as the agent to try to get him onto a team with another couple of his own clients, because that's what Rich Paul does. He builds super teams out of his own clients. And from Ben Simmons' perspective, obviously, does he want to play basketball? I mean, that's clearly he does, but
that's what I mean. Like that. So that's how I'd be leveraging this though, right? You want to build a super team. You want him to go somewhere. Well, we're going to need to get value for him to go to that place. Yeah. So get your client to play to build his value so we can make that deal. I don't think that's probably the conversation that needs to be had here.
Well, that's likely what happened when he showed up to because he didn't show up to training camp. He showed up well into like the second game already. Yeah. So they probably said either, exactly what you're saying. You need to show that you are still of value so that you can be moved. And also every day you sit out, you are going to, he hasn't made a single dollar off of his new contract since he's been back.
Yeah. Well, obviously this will continue to evolve. I know Braden and Christian will cover it extensively, continue to cover it extensively on their show.
I don't think so. Christian wants no part of this conversation anymore. So if I can, we will, but well, it's just, between Ben Simmons and Kyrie, it's all a mess, and it's boring now. It's, we don't care anymore. He'll do what he does, and Kyrie will sit as well. And there's much more to talk about. So
that was a great plug for your show. Great plug for your show. They will talk about other things, I guess. We won't know what it is, but at some point we will get a resolution to this whole silly saga, and when that happens, either on this show or on Braden's other show, it shall be discussed in its conclusion. All right, that has been our show for this week. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Braden, as always. Thanks to our listeners, we appreciate it. And that was Hattrick. Hattrick is a member of the Ordinary Podcasting Network. It's produced every week by Jordan Dowler Coleman and Braden Dowler Coleman. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
Jordan, your face when I came in hot on Doc Rivers was so funny. I was like,
I did not see that.
No, you're just like
hot one. That came in out of nowhere.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network wishes to acknowledge that the lands on which our conversations take place include Treaty 6 territory, the traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. And we extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, create, and share stories on these territories.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network intends to engage in conversations and dialogue which acknowledge that reconciliation is not a destination, but a journey, and that we remain committed to practicing our craft in a decolonized space.